Chapter 12. For the better part of 3 days, Bryn Olmsford and Roan Lee rode north with Eleanor toward the keep of PARANOR. The path chosen by the Druid was long and circuitous, a slow, hard journey through country made rugged by steep slide, narrow passes, and choking forest wilderness. But at the same time, the path was free of the presence of gnomes, mauled wraiths, and other evils that might beset the unwary traveller. And it was for this reason that Eleanor had made this choice. Whatever else must be endured on their journey north, he was determined that in the making of that journey he would take no further chances with the life of the Vale Girl. So he did not take them through the Hall of Kings as he had once done with Olmsford, a march that would have forced them to leave their horses and proceed afoot through the underground caverns that interred the kings of old, where traps could be triggered with every step forward and monsters guarded against all who trespassed. Nor did he take them across the Rab to the Janison Pass, a ride through which open country where they might be easily seen, and which would take them much too close to the forests of the Eastland and the enemy they sought to avoid. Instead, he took them west along the Myrmidon, through the deep forest that blanketed the lower slopes of the Dragon's Teeth, from the valley of Shell to the mountain forests of Tursus. They rode west until at last they reached the Kennan Pass, a high mountain trail that led them far into the Dragon's Teeth, to emerge miles further north within the forest that bound the castle of PARANOR. It was at dawn of the third day that they came down from the Kennan into the valley beyond, a dawn grey and as hard as iron, clouded over and cold with winter's chill. They rode in a line, traversing the narrow pass through mountain, bare and stark as they loomed against the morning sky, and it was as if all life had ceased to be. Wind swept the empty rock with fierce gusts, and they bent their heads against its force. Below, the forested valley that sheltered the castle of the Druid stretched dark and forbidding before them. A faint swirling mist hid the distant pinnacle of the keep from their eyes. As they rode, Bryn Olmsford struggled with the unshakable sense of impending disaster. It was a premonition, really, and it had been with her since they had left the Valley of Shale. It tracked her with insidious purpose, a shadow as murky and cold as the land she rode through, an elusive thing that lurked within the rocks and crags, flitting from one place of hiding to another, watching with sly and evil intent. Hunched down within her riding cloak, drawing what warmth she could from the bulky folds, she let her mount choose its path on the narrow trail, and felt the weight of the presence as it followed after her. It had been the wraith mostly, she thought, that fostered that premonition, more than the harshness of the day, the dark intent of the Druid she followed, or the new-found fear she felt for the power of the Wishsong. It was the wraith. The Druid had assured her that there were no others. Yet, such a dark and evil thing, silent in its coming, swift and terrible in its attack, then gone as quickly as it had appeared. With nothing left but its ashes, it was as if it were being come from death into life, then gone back again, faceless, formless, a thing without identity, yet, above all, frightening. There would be others. How many others did she know, nor care to know? Many certainly, all searching for her. She sensed it instinctively, Maud Wraith. Wherever they might be, whatever their other dark purposes, all would be looking for her. Only one, the Druid had said. Yet that one had found them. And if one had found them, others could. How was it that that one had found them? Eleanor had brushed aside her question, and when she asked it, chance, he had answered. Somehow it had crossed their trail and followed after, choosing its moment to strike when it thought the Druid weakened. But Bryn thought it equally possible that the thing had tracked the Druid since his flight from the Eastland. If that were so, it would have gone first to Shady Vale, and to Year. Odd, but there had been a moment earlier, a brief fleeting moment, as she wound her way down through the greyness of the dawn, alone with her thoughts, wrapped in the solitude of wind and cold, when she had felt her brother's touch. It was as if he had been looking at her, his vision somehow reaching past the distance that separated them, to find her, as she had made her way out of the great cliffs of the Dragon's Teeth. But then the touch had faded, and Yale was his distance once more, as the home she had left him to keep watch over. This morning she was worried for Year's safety. The Wraith might have gone first to Shady Vale and found Year, despite what Elanon said. The Druid had dismissed the idea, but he was not to be trusted completely. Elanon was the keeper of secrets, and what he revealed was what he wished known, nothing more. It had always been that way with Omsford, ever since the Druid had first come to Sheer. She thought again of his meeting with the Shade of Bremen in the Valley of Shao. Something had passed between them that the Druid had chosen to keep hidden. Something terrible. Despite his assurances to the contrary, he had learned something that had disturbed him greatly, had even frightened him. Could it be that what he had learned involved Ye? The thought haunted her. Were anything to happen to her brother and the Druid to learn of it, she felt he would keep it from her. Nothing would be allowed to interfere with the mission he had set for her. He was dark and terrible in his determination as the enemy they sought to overcome. And in that he frightened her as much as they. She was still troubled by what he had done to Roan. Roan Lee loved her. It was unspoken between them perhaps, but it was there. He had come with her because of that love. So to make certain that she had someone with whom she could trust. He did not feel Elanon was that person, but the Druid had subverted Roan's intentions and at the same time silenced his criticism. He had challenged Roan's self-designated role as protector. When the challenge was accepted, he had turned the Highlander into a lessened version of himself by giving of magic to the Sword of Leaf. An old and battered relic, the sword had been little more than a symbol Roan bore to remind himself of the legacy of courage and strength of heart attributed to the House of Leaf. But the Druid had made it a weapon with which a Highlander might seek to attain his own oft-imaged feat of arms. In so doing, Elanon had mandated that Roan's role as protector be something far more awesome than either she or the Highlander had envisioned. And what the Druid had made of Roan Lee might well destroy him. It was like nothing I could ever have imagined, he had confided to her when they were alone the first night after leaving the Valley of Shao. He had been hesitant in his speech, yet excited. It had taken him that long just to bring himself to speak of it to her. The power just seemed to explode within me, Bryn. I don't even know what made me do it. I just acted. I saw Elanon trapped within the fire and I just acted. When the sword cut into the fire, I could feel its power. I was a part of it. At that moment, I felt as if there were nothing I could not do. Nothing. His face had flushed with the memory. Bryn, not even the Druid frightens me anymore. Bryn's eyes lifted to scan the dark spread of the forest below, still misted in the half-light of the autumn day. Her premonition slipped through the rocks and across the twist of the path, quick and certain. We will show no face until it's upon us, she thought, and then we will be destroyed. Somehow, I know it to be so. The voice whispers in my thoughts of Vier, of Roan, of Elanon, and of the Maud Wraiths most of all. It whispers and secrets kept from me, in the grey oppression of this day, and in the misty dark of what lies ahead. We will be destroyed, all of us. They were within the forest by midday. All afternoon they rode, winding their way through mist and gloom, threading needles of passage through massive trees and choking brush. This was an empty woods, devoid of life and colour, hard as iron in autumn's grey, with leaves gone dusty brown and curled against the cold like frightened things. Wolves had once prowled these woods, great grey monsters that protected against all who dared to trespass in the land of the Druids. But the wolves were gone, their time long past, and now there was only the stillness and the emptiness. All about there was a sense of something dying. Dusk had begun to fall when Elanon at last bade them halt. Weary and achy from the long day's ride, they tied their horses within a gathering of giant oaks, giving them only a small ration of water and feed, so they might not cramp. Then they went on afoot. The gloom about them deepened with night's coming, and the stillness gave way to a low, distant rumble that seemed to hang in the air, steady and sure. The druid led them on, picking his way with the sense of one familiar with the region. There was no hesitation in his step as he found the path, as silent as the shadows about them. The three slipped through the trees and brush and melted into the night. "What is it that we are going to do?" Bryn whispered within her mind. "What dark purpose of the druids do we serve this night?" Then the trees broke before them. One of the grey dusts rose the cliffs of PARANOR, steep and towering, and at their rim was the ancient castle of the druids called the Keep. It rose high within the darkness, a monstrous stone and iron giant rooted in the earth. From within the keep and the mountain upon which it rested sounded the rumble that they had heard earlier, and which had grown steadily louder as they approached. The deep thrum of machinery grinding in ceaseless cadence against the silence that lifted all about. Torches burned like devil's eyes within narrow iron-bound windows, crimson and lurid against the night sky, and smoke trailed into the mist. Once Druids had walked the halls beyond, and it was a time of enlightenment and great promise for the races of man. But that time was gone. Now only gnomes and moored wraiths walked in Paranor. "Hear me," Eleanor whispered suddenly. They bent close to listen. "Hear what I tell you, and do not question. The Shade of Bremen has given warning. Paranor has fallen to the moored wraiths. They seek within its walls the hidden histories of the Druids, so that their own power may be strengthened. Other times the keep has fallen to an enemy, and it has always been regained. But this time that cannot be. This marks the end of all that has been. The age closes, and Paranor must pass from the land." Highlander and Vailgir stared at the druid. "What are you saying, Eleanor?" Bryn demanded fiercely. The druid's eyes gleamed in the dark. "That in my lifetime and yours, in the lifetime of your children, and perhaps your children's children, no man shall set foot within the walls of the druid's keep after this night. We are to be the last. We shall go into the keep through its lower passages that are yet unknown to the wraiths and gnomes who search within. We shall go to where the power of the druids has for centuries been seated, and with that power close away the keep from mankind. We must pass quickly, though, for all found within the keep this night shall die. Even we, if we prove too slow. Once the needed magic is brought forth, there will be little time left to escape its sweep." Bryn shook her head slowly. "I don't understand. Why must this be done? Why can no one again enter Paranor after tonight? What are the work that you do?" The druid's hand touched her cheek softly. "It is finished," Bryn answered. "But the Malmord, the Eldash, nothing we do here." "Oh, nothing we do here can help us in our quest." Eleanor's voice was almost lost to her. "What we do here serves another purpose." "What if we're seen?" Rowan broke in suddenly. "We shall fight our way free," Eleanor answered at once. "We must. Remember first to protect Bryn. Do not stop, whatever happens. Once the magic has been called forth, do not look back, and do not slow." He bent forward, his lean face close to that of the Highlander. "Remember, too, that you now possess the power of druid magic in your sword. Nothing can stop you, Prince of Lee. Nothing." Rowan Lee nodded solemnly, and this time did not question what he was told. Bryn shook her head slowly, and the premonition danced before her eyes. "Vailgir," the druid was speaking to her, and lifted her eyes to find his. "Stay close to the Prince of Lee and me. Let us shield you from whatever danger we may encounter. Do nothing to risk your own life. You, most of all, must be kept safe, for you are the key to the destruction of the Eldash. That quest lies ahead of you, and it must be completed." Both hands came up to grip her shoulders. "Understand, I cannot leave you here safely, or I will do so. The danger is greater than it will be if you go with us into the keep. Death flies all through these woods on this night, and it must be kept from you." He paused. waiting for her response. Slowly she nodded. I'm not afraid, she lied. Elanon stepped back. Then let us begin, silently now. Speak no more until this is done. They disappeared into the night like shadows.